How's it going, guys? My name is Fred Lamagino from Florida Gulf Coast University. I'm a physical therapy student, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about one of my favorite books for business, and it's The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs. Um, it's How to Be Insanely Great in Front of Any Audience, and it's written by Carmine Gallo, and it's just a really great book. It's a synopsis of essentially what Steve Jobs does in every one of his presentations. I'm sure you've heard of Apple Corp, which is what creates Macintosh computers, iPhones, iPads, and other technology devices. And Steve Jobs was the cornerstone of the company, CEO, and through multiple backlashes was taken down from his positions at the CEO position, and started other companies, and was able to get back into Apple, and eventually passed away a little while ago. Um, I remember watching his presentations as a child. I guess maybe child is not the right word. 14, 15 years old is when I saw the first one when he introduced the iPhone. And that's when I first knew that I wanted to learn more about this person. I mean, he was able to convince and talk through a crowd of thousands of people to get them to understand why they needed an iPhone and why they needed to be incorporated with the world with a new device. And this book really covers how he did it. And Carmine starts his book by outlining how he generally starts his presentations. And he breaks it down into acts, like a play or a show. So each act has specific parts that go along with it, and they're explained in a really easy way so the reader can understand how the book is presented. Act 1 is where Steve creates the storyline of the product, or whatever he's presenting on. Even things like his Stanford presentation for the graduation ceremony. If you look back in 2005, you can find all the YouTube clips. I'll put some down in the description below. But he introduces the product, he introduces the enemy, and he introduces the proactive hero, as they call it in this book. But also he uses the rule of threes a lot in all of his presentations, and this is where they talk about that. The rule of three is basically how humans have developed to learn and understand information broadcasted in multiples of three. So when you present a topic, if you present it in three different bullet points or three different ways, or three different topics, and that's the only thing you talk about, that's how you're going to get max retention out of your audience. And also, the book conveniently has 3 acts, so it's actually following along pretty nicely. On top of revealing the hero and revealing the enemy, so to speak, and he describes how the hero is going to take down the enemy in his presentation. So he will describe what is wrong with the enemy, as far as maybe they were using Motorola as an example for that iPhone speech. How it didn't have the right receptions, it wasn't able to do internet, and then the iPhone came along and had internet speed and had all these extra features that the Motorola phone didn't have, and it would just keep going. He would keep going on and on about how the hero would win the fight, and I thought that was a very interesting way to broadcast a piece of technology to an audience. In Act 2, this is where he delivers the experience of the product. So you try to jazz up your numbers a bit, talk about statistics, talk about how the success of the company is going. I don't know if you've ever seen any of Steve Jobs' more recent ones, maybe 2010 or 2011. Also, there'll be just some links in the description. But he always begins his presentations with how the company's doing, what the previous products were doing, how they compare to the competition. So he starts the presentation on a great note by describing how the company is doing as a whole. Then he uses zippy words and really short Twitter headlines to get people to remember why they want this product. And the biggest one that I can remember is when he was talking about the Macbook Air. It said it's so small it fits in an envelope, and that was the main part of the whole presentation. So he had a vanilla folder, and all he did was pull the iPad Air straight out of the manila folder, and everyone went nuts because it was the smallest and thinnest laptop ever created. So he had to make it relatable and easy to understand, fast, and it created that instant want of I need that product now. And you have to be able to do this in presentations when you're trying to get a loan or when you're trying to be a businessman. You have to be able to get people to want your product or want your service instantaneously. And this book really helps you figure that out. The final act, Act 3, is where where Carmine, Gallo, the author, talks about how Steve prepared for his presentations. And I guess one of the biggest things that I learned from that part of the book was you can't be Steve Jobs until you've done what Steve Jobs has done. And I think everyone's always seen Steve they remember him in a black turtleneck with jeans and white shoes because that's what he wore at every single keynote. But he's Steve Jobs. He was the #1 CEO in the country. He had so much influence and money that it didn't matter what he wore. People were going to listen anyway. But the biggest point this book tries to make is that you can't do that until you have made it that well. You can't walk into a bank with shorts and a t-shirt on. It just doesn't work the same. You have to provide the image. That first impression is really important. It even goes into detail in that act of the book where Steve went for a loan to get money for Next, which was his business after he got kicked out of Apple. So he needed to go to the bank, and he was already famous. People knew who he was, and he went into the bank with a brand new tuxedo on, and he's Steve Jobs. People know who he was, and then people were saying, "Why are you wearing a tuxedo, Steve?" And he's like, "You got to look the part. First impressions are important. People don't want to give money to someone who doesn't look like they need it, or doesn't look like they can handle it in the right way." So that first impression is crazy valuable, and that was one of the biggest things I picked up from that. Another thing that he did in that act is he talked about stage presence and making it look effortless. And that's one of the things that people just don't know how to do anymore. I haven't seen anyone, I'm sure there are people out there, I just personally haven't seen any that has the kind of stage presence that Steve has, talking about technology or product or service that he's providing to the customer. He has a complete master of everything that's happening, a mastery of everything that's happening, and he understands how to correlate the crowd into organizing them into what he needs them to do, which is to understand the product and go from there. But that's my little spiel on the Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs. Really great book. You should pick it up. It's really cheap. It's like $10. So thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.